Once emotional intimacy is more present, it's deeper. You feel seen, you feel cherished, you feel like you can share what's most important to you. And it doesn't mean that your partner agrees. It means that your partner receives you and accepts you for who you truly are. Any couple who's been married for at least 7 years has been married long enough to experience the different phases and seasons of sexual fulfillment, connection, and turn on. Knowing that there are seasons when things are really hot and wonderful, well, you know that they are hot and wonderful. But when they are more dormant or less active, it's very common to start to wonder, is this just a season or is this the new normal? Have you transitioned into a sexless marriage or a mostly sexless marriage? This question is just one that is part and parcel of a long-term lasting relationship. Esther Perel shared this in her presentation, where she talked about having had 3 marriages, all to the same husband. It's just having had many marriages, but all with the same spouse. And that certainly also is true when it comes to sex and the question of a sexless marriage. When I'm talking about seasons, I could describe it in a few different ways. Like maybe you have the honeymoon phase, regardless of whether you've been having sex for a while or not before you get married, whether or not you have sex on your wedding night. Typically, there is the honeymoon phase, which for some relationships lasts months, for some relationships lasts many years. And then maybe a child is born. Or maybe there's a really stressful time at work. Maybe a parent is ill, and not only is one or both of you spending lots of time with that parent, you're also taking care of all kinds of things, shouldering both logistical, emotional, and medical matters. There are seasons where there just are other things that take your time, take your attention, and even if you have time and attention, you're just too worn out, too stressed, or you don't even have time in the first place. But whatever the case may be, it's during these times that sex naturally takes a back seat. So the question is it going to come back? If the two of you put attention on it and make a point of reconnecting in this way, it will come back. And if you don't make a point of it, maybe it will and maybe it won't. Sometimes just having such a long time without having sex, it becomes more complicated to re-engage, to initiate after that fallow period. Even if you both want it, it just starts to feel awkward. The longest that a couple had gone before coaching with me was 11 years, which was due to her not being so enthusiastic and then going through menopause, and then it just became this invisible wall between them. And he was interested, but definitely didn't presume it would happen again. And she was interested, but really, it was almost like she didn't know how to have sex anymore. Neither one of them knew that they both wanted this until they started coaching with me, because they just never discussed it. If you both want to work on this part of your relationship, there really is no limit to the amount of pleasure, sensation, and reconnecting that is available for both of you. However, there are a few ground rules in reconnecting. Everything I'm saying applies both if you're in a sexless marriage and you want to rekindle sex, or you're in a bland, occasionally have sex marriage and you want fireworks. Whichever your situation is, it is essential that you cultivate the emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy is a prerequisite for sexual intimacy. But if you haven't been having sex or haven't been having wonderful sex, then there are walls, invisible walls that build up, walls of feeling unseen, feeling rejected, feeling confused, just mostly unseen and not cherished. And in fact, if what you need to do in your relationship is to cultivate emotional intimacy, far and away the best thing I have to offer you is the Aligned and Hot Marriage program. It is a sequential, fun, fairly easy step-by-step program that you can do on your own when you choose at a pace that's comfortable and learn how to know yourself in a way that you can share with presence and curiosity. It will guide you to have conversations you haven't had before. And people often think, oh, it's going to be heavy. No, it is not. When people do the Aligned and Hot Marriage program, invariably after one of the modules, they are smiling more. They feel more connected. So definitely click on the link in the show notes and enroll in the Aligned and Hot Marriage program if the next step for you is to improve communication in order to cultivate emotional intimacy. Once emotional intimacy is more present, it's deeper. You feel seen, you feel cherished, you feel like you can share what's most important to you. And it doesn't mean that your partner agrees. It means that your partner receives you and accepts you for who you truly are. When that is happening in the emotional heart communication intimacy realm, for the majority of couples, it functions like foreplay for sensual touch and sexual passion to follow. It doesn't naturally follow when you find you're still not having sex, even though you're smiling more and enjoying one another more. Then there are two things to do next. One is to just be more affectionate. Let the warmth in your heart and the love you have for one another be expressed in how your bodies touch. Maybe you compliment one another, you hold hands, you lean in, you let your bodies express how you're feeling, just with affection. That is one thing. And the other thing that you can do, besides essentially non-sexual physical touch, is set a timer. This is going to sound so weird, but when you have structure, when you set a timer, it's just less intimidating. So maybe you set a timer for 5 minutes and you plan to kiss and make out. For 5 minutes, you both close your eyes and just explore one another's bodies. Or maybe for 5 minutes, one of you puts attention on the other one's genitals. And maybe you switch for 5 minutes, maybe you don't. But the point is that having the restriction of the 5-minute timer, it can be a 10-minute timer, you can play with it, but having that restriction and the very clear intention of what you're going to focus on, it functions in a way that's sort of magical. It lets you be fully present in that interaction without going from 0 to 100. And so going from 0 to 5 and 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 and 15 to 20, at some point it will build like a snowball that builds momentum on into an orgasmic connection. But until that takes over and the passion guides you, you can start one step at a time. I do want to add one more very important principle, which is that as human beings, we have the fight or flight response to stress. That stress can be physical stress, emotional stress, any kind of stress. And when we have our fight or flight response, we are functioning in what is called our sympathetic nervous system. It's a whole neural network. When we are not stressed, when we have just finished meditating, when we have had a serene stroll in a beautiful garden, when we just sit in a rocking chair and enjoy the view and a warm cup of tea, when we have a really beautiful conversation with a friend, whatever it is that delights you, then you are functioning in your parasympathetic nervous system, where the fight or flight response isn't activated. What is activated is a kind of ease and an openness for connection. We don't have our walls up during this time. Flirtation, sex, passion, erotic fulfillment, they all happen in the parasympathetic nervous system. So there are many different reasons for a sexless marriage, but the reason that helps us understand why there are seasons is that when we are run by our sympathetic nervous system, as we are when there's sleep deprivation or any kind of stressor, and, having a new baby, there are physical changes that account for not being ready for sex, but there also are just the stress of a transition, even if you're really excited about it. And when we are in the sympathetic nervous system, it is just hard to feel genuine, yummy arousal. So another way to articulate the issue that I've been talking about throughout this whole episode is in terms of being in the sympathetic nervous system, in terms of having stressors, what can you do to facilitate both of you transitioning into relaxation and ease? Because if your challenges with sex are seasonal, once you emerge out of the fight or flight phase into relaxation and ease, your sex should naturally rejuvenate. And if you feel really relaxed and comfortable and emotionally connected, and there isn't any sex happening, then it really needs your attention. It's not going to just come back on its own. I think of sex in a marriage as being like salt. Without it, things are bland and uninspiring. Even if you have a lot of meaning in parenting and your career, a marriage without wonderful sex is just squandering some of the most exquisite, incredible, gratifying, fulfilling elements of being a human being. Don't waste the opportunity when you have someone you love who loves you. Don't stay in a sexless marriage past the natural season for doing so. It's totally unnecessary.